So we've got some big news. Sajid Javid, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the second most powerful politician in the country, has quit. And so his resignation has come following rumours of tensions between Javid and the Prime Minister's senior advisor, Dominic Cummings. And it's important to realise how powerful Dominic Cummings is, unelected bureaucrat. So anyways, the Prime Minister has said Javid has to fire all his special advisors and replace them with number 10 special advisors to make in one team. So that means that all of Javid's top team would have to go. And this is important because there have been some problems with Javid's team and Johnson's team. And so anyways, this is the new guy. Anyways, he's going to be the new mouthpiece for Cummings. One brown guy out, another brown guy in, same policies. So this is Laura Kuenssberg weak source analysis here. This ain't even a D grade, bruv. Real talk, yeah. She goes, the relationship between the next door neighbours in Downing Street is vital in any government. The relationship with Javid and Boris Johnson as individuals has been okay. That's not really that true, but there have been clashes between their wider teams. That's one way to put it. This is a massive elevation for. So she's basically talking about the new guy here. A step up to Chancellor is huge ask. This guy was only elected in 2015, Rishi Sunak. So yeah, this is Kuenssberg's weak source analysis. I'll give you some proper analysis, right? You guys ready? Yeah. So, budget raises tensions between Javid and Dominic Cummings. So they've had problems for months, basically since it's been installed, I think, or since the election has come to pass. So Boris Johnson's nickname for Sajid Javid is Chino, Chancellor in name only. So that basically means that he has no power. And so every time he says no to Boris Johnson, they get pissed off at him. Why? Because they see him as a guy who's just there as a figurehead, a mouthpiece for Boris Johnson, a guy who has no power over fiscal responsibility. He's just there. You know, he's there to up the diversity quota, essentially. Brown man. Since Mr. Cummings has sacked Javid's advisor, Sonia Khan, so she was basically marched out as some sort of like mole, the person leaking things. He had police kick her out of, I think it was number 11. And he didn't even tell Javid, he just did it. So that shows you the power of Dominic Cummings, how much power they've given him. Downing Street advisor used his early weeks at number 10 to push through a number of big spending commitments in areas such as health and police. So basically, Cummings has said, look, I want to go through these policies here, I want to commit to big spending, and this is a way to cut off labour, really, is to spend big. And Javid is saying no, because Javid's a Thatcherite guy. You know, he believes in balancing the books, he believes in austerity. Dominic Cummings wanted to announce this, so here we go. Look, it said one person with knowledge of the Downing Street face-off, in spite of Treasury concerns about weak finances and continuing Brexit uncertainty. So Javid is saying we need to pump the brakes here because A, we don't know what's happening with Brexit, and B, is basically going to be the money's going to be borrowed, and Javid's against that. He wants to cut the deficit and all that boring stuff. He doesn't believe in public spending. There's no money, said one former government official. That reminds me of, I think it was the last Labour Exchequer who said, good luck, there's no money, or something like that. Johnson and Cummings have zero experience of a situation when they have to think about the public finances and the economy. So basically Johnson's going to spend big and just bankrupt the economy, no tax cuts and massive spending, but he's not going to realise that he has to somehow balance the books, especially because that's what Conservatives are really about. They claim that's what they're about, but it's not. But anyway, so we've got, in spite of tensions between Javid and Cummings, senior officials and ministers say the Chancellor and Prime Minister are working together well on the budget. So there's going to be a budget coming up and there's going to be a lot of spending going in, and that's the problem there, I think. I don't think there's much more in this article of interest. So look, okay, we'll go through this article first. In order to survive as Chancellor, Sajid Javid is having to adapt quickly. It's an article by Katie Balls. So basically it says here, look, it is there to serve get Brexit done, strong economies, to set a reminder that a strong economics must underline any well-functioning Tory government. And that's something Dominic Raab said as well, where it's like, you know, I want to help poor people, but there's no money, but I can give you a tax cut because we about that. We can spend money on Brexit, but poor people, nah, you sit down. Under the Chancellor's rules, he will run a balanced current budget, investment no more than 3% GDP, and review borrowing limit if debt interest begins to rise. This was one of the few battles Javid had won since Johnson appointed him as Chancellor. So he's basically trying to put in sensible financial spending. I say sensible as in he just doesn't want to invest money into the country. He doesn't want to invest too much in infrastructure, and we can see that potentially with something like HS2 there would have been a bit of a problem because HS2 is very expensive. There's also that weird bridge he wants to build between Scotland and Northern Ireland, which is just, it's bizarre. So since being appointed as Chancellor, Javid has seen an aide sacked without his permission by Johnson's senior aide, Cummings. He has been besieged by reports that the former Vote Leave campaign director is calling the shots rather than him, and has developed the Whitehall nickname Chino. So he's basically been cucked. That's what this article is saying, and this is what the FT article is saying. He's been cucked by Cummings, and he's got no power. And so finally, if we go to this article here, Sajid Javid abandons pledge to austerity with savage cuts plan. Sajid Javid has been accused of abandoning his pre-election pledge of end austerity, and he's ordered ministers to identify savage cuts for departmental budgets. Chancellors promised just months ago no department would sink their budgets, but today he wrote that cabinet ministers are asking them to draw up cuts up to 5% on spending plans. So each department looks like they're going to have to find 5% cuts. Yeah, and that includes schools, hospitals, all that stuff. We have elected with a clear financial mandate to keep control of day-to-day spending. Hang on, mate. First you say you're not going to cut spending. Now you say you do, and you say your mandate is to keep control of day-to-day spending. So that means if you knew these cuts had to happen, that means you were lying before the election, which is standard, especially with these sorts of slimy twats. But anyways. But in Javid's spending speech, just 3 months before, so that goes to the earlier stuff. Not much else important, but what we can see is Javid was a guy who was basically told during the election that he's going to have to say there's going to be massive spending. Now he's saying there's going to be massive cuts, and part of me wonders, did Johnson know that Javid was going to write that letter? Because Johnson's promising big spending, Cummings is also promising big spending. So I wonder if Javid went behind Johnson's back on this one and said that there's going to have to be massive budget cuts. Because Johnson's running as the right-wing populist, that means he's going to have to try and spend money somewhere to try and sort of appease working class people, because that's how populism tends to work. If you use right-wing populism, you have to appeal to working class people somehow. It looks like Javid was, this was the final straw for him. It wasn't, he joined the team after Brexit despite being wanting to stay in the EU. He had to sell himself to Johnson, and yeah, he's not gotten anything out of it. None of these guys who have sold their souls out, Andrea Leadsom, Esther McVeigh, some of these people who sold themselves for Brexit and for Boris Johnson government have been sacked. They've got nothing out of this apart from a few months worth of being a minister. It's just embarrassing. Like, at least under May, he was Home Secretary. He had standing, apart from his weird free kick stances. He had some power, but under Johnson he had nothing, and now he's been given the boot. Why? They told him, fire your advisors and you take orders from Johnson and Cummings now, and he said no. I don't want anyone thinking this is a brave guy here. He was a massive proponent of austerity. He still is. I guarantee you ask him in a year's time, did you think austerity was the right thing to do? He'll say yes. You ask him in 30 years' time, was austerity the right thing to do? He'd say yes. So I don't want to hear anyone talking about how this guy's fallen on his sword, and he don't want to take orders from Johnson. That's what, over firing his advisor and all this crap. This guy, he's a complete scumbag. He's forgotten the roots he came from. The poor bus driver who paid for it, his dad. He's a scumbag. He's made it up the ladder, and he's pulled the ladder from us. He's a scumbag, and so I don't see anyone have any sympathy for Javid talking about he's fallen on the shield, all this nonsense. He sold out at key intervals for Brexit to have power, so I don't see any sympathy for him, and I'll leave it there before I ramble on any longer. I'll see you in the next one.